Hello chess lovers, I have a brilliant attacking game for you played by Mikhail Tal against Boris Gulko. Tal started with e4, c5 by black, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, e6, we see the Scheveningen variation, and Tal chooses this razor sharp Matanovich attack, f4, knight c6, bishop e3, bishop e7, queen f3, a6, white castles queenside, queen c7, and g4. Tal is starting an immediate pawn storm on the king side. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, e5, f takes e5, d takes e5, queen g3, pinning the pawn on e5. And a bad move by black, knight takes g4. A better move is bishop d6, protecting the pawn on e5 and getting rid of that pin. If bishop e3, then bishop e6, developing the bishop. But after knight takes g4, white could have easily gained advantage by playing knight d5. If queen d6, then bishop c3, castling, bishop e2, queen h6 check, bishop d2. This is a forced line, bishop h4, bishop takes g4, bishop takes g3, bishop takes h6, bishop takes g4, rook g1, bishop h5, rook takes g3, and white is a piece up. Let's go back, but after knight takes g4, instead of that strong knight d5 move, Mikhail Tal played bishop e2, which allows black to equalize the game by playing queen c6. Though black played queen a5, I will tell you the difference a few moves later. Tal played bishop takes g4, e takes d4, knight d5. Now the threat is knight c7 check. Imagine that the queen were on c6, then black could have played bishop d6 in this position, attacking the queen and also covering this c7 square. But when the queen is on a5, there is no bishop d6 move. Though after queen takes a2, Tal didn't even play knight c7 check. Instead he played queen e5, threatening checkmate on e7. Queen a1 check, king d2, queen a5 check, b4, and black queen is hurrying to protect the bishop on e7. Rook g1, f6, bishop h5 check, and king f8. If g6, then knight takes f6, king f8, knight takes h7 check, rook takes h7, rook f1 check, bishop f5, rook takes g6, bishop g5 check, king d1, and black's position is just collapsing, and this is winning for white. Let's go back. After bishop h5 check, we see king f8, and now comes a fantastic move by Mikhail Tal. Can you find his next move? Ready? You can see that the queen on e5 is hanging, but Tal is just paying no attention, and he plays rook takes g7, sacrificing the queen. Black played f takes e5, but if king takes g7, then again white is winning after rook g1 check. If king h6, then queen f4 check, king takes h5, queen f3 check, king h6, queen g3, f5, queen g7 check, king h5, knight f4 check, and black king is getting checkmated. After rook takes g7, we see pawn takes e5, rook f7 check, king e8, rook takes e7 double check, king f8, rook f1 check, king g8, and after rook f7, black resigned. Well, Tal missed a checkmate into after knight f6 check, king f8, white has this rook f7 checkmate. Though of course after rook f7, white is also checkmating black king. If queen d6, then knight f6 check, of course rook e8 is also possible, but I think that this looks more beautiful. Queen takes f6 and rook e8 checkmate. What a brilliant game by Mikhail Tal. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Hello chess lovers, Let's have a look at a game played by Magnus Carlsen and Deepan Chakravarti. This game was played in 2004 and at that time Carlsen was rated 2552. Carlsen is playing with the white pieces and he started with e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6 and bishop b5. Black played in this position e5, a relatively rare and risky line. More popular moves instead of playing e5 are queen c7 or g6. But here we have e5, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, knight takes e5, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen d4, forking these two knights, castling, queen takes e5. And here came a strong move by Carlsen. Can you find that move? That move is d4, sacrificing a pawn for a quick development. C takes d4, a dubious move. Considering what happened next, a better option would have been queen takes d4. But here we see c takes d4, rook e1, bishop e6, and a strong novelty by Carlsen. Can you find that move? That move is bishop g5. White simply prevents black from castling queenside and at the same time threatens knight f6 check. Bishop e7, and another strong move by Carlsen. Can you find that move? Well, in this position, knight f6 check is also playable. For example, bishop takes f6, rook e5, bishop e5, f4, bishop c7. This is also in white's favor as well, but Carlsen went for another interesting line. f4, giving no chance black. Queen d5, bishop takes e7, king takes e7, and here came another destructive move. Can you find that move? f5, trying to open up this e-file. Queen takes f5, queen d4, queen d5, queen b4 check, c5, knight takes c5, a5, queen a3, queen d4 check, king h1, queen b4, queen e3, and black resigned because black's position is inevitably being destructed if, for example, queen g4, h3, queen g6, queen a3. There are so many threats, that's why black resigned. A great game by Magnus Carlsen. Your comments please, and thanks for watching. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful game for you played by Mikhail Tal against Sviridov. The game was played in 1969 in Stuttgart and this was a chess simul. Let's see how the game went on. Tal started with e4, c5 by Sviridov, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 and g6. Black goes for dragon variation. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, bishop d7, white castles queenside, rook c8, king b1, queen a5, g4, h6, h4, a6. We can see that black is not hurrying to castle kingside. Instead, black is preparing an immediate attack on the queen side. Bishop e2, knight e5, g5, h takes g5, h takes g5, and a bad move by black, rook takes h1. A better move was knight h5, but probably Zverev decided to exchange the rooks and only then play knight h5. But after rook takes h1, Mikhail Tal didn't capture on h1. Instead, he went for a fantastic combination. You can pause the video and try to find his next moves. Ready? Tal played g takes f6, allowing black to capture on d1 with a check, and now the whole idea of this combination, black plays knight takes d1, and right now you can see that both the queen on a5 and also the bishop on g7 are hanging. Black captured on d2, and now instead of recapturing, here comes this fantastic f takes g7 move. Now the threat is promoting the pawn to a rook or to a queen, and that will be a checkmate. And believe it or not, but in this position black resigned. Well, if e6, then white can promote the pawn to a queen. If king e7, then queen g7. And if queen a5, then bishop g5 check followed by queen g8 checkmate. Or after f takes g7, if a move like bishop e6, then white can promote to a queen, and after king d7, capture on c8 with a check, and only then capture on d2, and white has 2 extra pieces. Just a fantastic combination by the magician from Riga. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, let's have a quick look at a game played by Milenko Lojanika and Gavain Jones. The game was played in 2009. White started with e4 and black went for Sicilian defense c5, knight f3 d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6. This is the dragon variation of Sicilian defense. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, black castles, bishop c4, bishop d7, castling queenside, and rook b8 by black. An interesting approach. This is the so-called Chinese dragon. Black is preparing knight a5 followed by b5. With a similar idea, black can even play queen b8. But we see rook b8 in the game, knight takes c6, a bad move by white. This gives black an easy chance to take on c6 with a pawn and open up the b file. h4, queen a5, and a horrible move by white, knight b1. Probably white got afraid of black's attack and decided to go for an immediate queen exchange. But this is actually a blunder and black wins on the spot. Can you find the winning move for black? Ready? In this position, black played knight takes e4 and white resigned. Well, white has to give up its queen like queen d4 in order to avoid checkmate. Well, if you take on a5, here comes bishop b2 checkmate, an amazing checkmate by black. That's why after knight takes d4, as I have already mentioned, white resigned. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have a very interesting game for you played by Yu Yangyi and Lu Shanglai. The game was played at 2nd Indonesia Open Chess Championship 2012. Yu Yangyi started with e4, c5 by Lu Shanglai, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6. Lu Shanglai goes for dragon variation. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, black castles kingside, and g4. White is going for this very aggressive Yugoslav attack. Of course, this means that we are going to see a lot of fireworks on the board. Bishop e6, knight takes e6, f takes e6, white castles queenside, knight e5, bishop e2, queen c8, h4, knight c4, bishop takes c4. Of course, white is not going to allow black to exchange his knight with his bishop. Bishop takes c4, queen takes c4, because now white is going to exchange his bishop with this mighty dragon bishop, which is protecting black king and also at any moment can attack white king. Bishop takes h6, queen takes h6 and b5. A very aggressive move, but queen c5 is more precise. The idea of queen c5 is that after h5 black can play g5, closing the king side. But instead, after queen takes h6 we see b5, h5, white is trying to open up this h file, b4, knight b1, and king f7. The king is going to escape from this dangerous part of the board. g5, rook c8, threatening checkmate on c2. c3, b takes c3, knight takes c3, knight takes h5. But now comes queen takes h7 check, king e8, queen takes g6 check, king d7, and queen takes h5. White is simply a piece up. Queen takes a2, a desperate move. Black is using the fact that this knight is pinned. But now white went for a very beautiful combination. Can you find white's next move? Ready? White played rook takes d6 check, king takes d6, rook d1 check, and black resigned. The idea is that after king c5, already this knight is no longer pinned and white can capture on a2. By the way, if king e5, then white can even checkmate black king in 1. This is a very beautiful checkmate. Seems like black was doing decent moves, but Sicilian dragon just collapsed when meeting this mighty Yugoslav attack. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have another spectacular game for you played by a chess player named Slate. The name of his opponent is unknown and the game was played in 1960. This was a correspondence game and Slate started with e4, c5 by black, Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, d6, bishop e2 and g6. Black goes for dragon variation, which is considered to be one of the sharpest and most aggressive variations of the Sicilian defense. But let's see how is white going to tame this wild dragon. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f4, queen b6, both attacking the pawn on b2 square, and already there can be some knight e4 sacrifices. Queen d3, which at the same time allows black to capture on b2 square, queen takes b2. But actually this can be very dangerous and white is managing to gain a very active counterplay. Rook b1, queen a3, and white castles kingside. Queen a5, now comes the rook, rook b5. White pieces are simply chasing black queen. Queen d8, a very passive approach by black, placing the queen on c7 square and acting against e5 would have been better, but instead we see queen d8 and now white is bringing into life this e5 idea. D takes e5, f takes e5 and knight takes d4. Well, actually placing the knight on d7 square would have been better, though after e6 still white is maintaining advantage and also white has a very dangerous attack. Let's go back. After f takes e5 we see knight takes d4 and in return white is capturing on f6. Knight takes e2 check, queen takes e2, bishop takes f6, rook d5. White is creating more and more problems for black. Queen c7. Well, if a move like bishop d7, then white can play knight e4, and if castling kingside, then simply queen d3, and looks like that black is losing a piece. Let's go back, but after rook d5 we see queen c7. Now comes the knight b5, queen c6, and now you can pause the video and try to find white's next moves. Ready? In this position, Slate first captured on f6, he takes f6. Well, if we move like queen takes f6, then simply knight c7 check. If king f8, then bishop h6 check, and then black king is getting checkmated. That's why black recaptured with a pawn. But now comes another brilliant sacrifice. This time it's time to sacrifice the knight. Knight c7 check. What's going on? Queen takes c7, bishop b6 discover check, and at the same time attacking black queen. Queen e7, well, if bishop e6, then simply bishop takes c7, it's over, white is winning. But we see queen e7, and here comes rook d8, and believe it or not, but this is a checkmate. The queen on e7 is pinned, and black king is getting checkmated. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this brilliant attacking game. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have a very short game for you played by the 13th world chess champion Garry Kasparov. The game was played in 1977. Actually at that time Kasparov was 14 years old. His opponent is Guy West, and let's see how the game went on. Kasparov started with e4 and his opponent went for Sicilian defense c5, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop b4. This is not so good move. Usually black in this position plays knight c6 or d6. But we see this bishop b4 move, which is the pin variation, which gives white a great advantage. e5 we see in the game, knight d5, bishop d2, knight takes c3, b takes c3, and the bishop retreats back to f8 square. Not so pleasant move. Well, if you play a move like bishop e7, then after queen g4, black is having problems. This pawn on g7 is hanging, and if you protect your pawn like playing g6, then your dark squares are being weakened, and this is of course good for white. But let's go back. We see bishop f8 move, bishop d3, d6, queen e2, and knight d7 by black. Now we have already reached the critical position. Can you find the best move for white? Ready? Did you find this fantastic knight takes e6 move? In this position black played queen b6. Well, if you take on e6, white can check on h5 and black is just losing. If g6, then you can simply take on g6. If king e7, then bishop g5 is winning. So in this position black played queen b6, and here comes another just destructive move. Can you find that move? Ready? Actually, knight c7 check, and in this position black resigned. For example, if you play king d8, then white will simply take on a8. And if you take on c7, then after e takes d6 check, black is losing its queen on c7. That's why in this position black resigned. What an amazing game by a 14-year-old chess player. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers! As you have noticed, we are getting bigger and bigger, and now my channel has more than 70,000 subscribers. Thanks to all of you for joining my channel and motivating me to work with doubled enthusiasm. On that occasion, I would like to share with you an aggressive attacking game played by the Soviet chess grandmaster and the 8th world chess champion Mikhail Tal. His opponent is Danish chess grandmaster Bent Larsen, who was the first Western player to pose a serious challenge to the Soviet Union's dominance in chess. This game was played in 1979 in Montreal, and now let's see what happened on the board. In this game, Mikhail Tal had white pieces and he started the game with e4, c5 by Larsen, Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, d6, and bishop g-file. Tal goes for Richter-Rauser attack. With his last move, white is threatening to capture on f6 and damage black's pawn structure on the king side, and at the same time is preventing black to go for dragon variation. e6, queen d2, white is preparing castling queenside, bishop e2, white castles queenside, a6, and here we go f4. Queen c7, bishop e2, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, and b5. In return, black is advancing on the queen side and is preparing to fianchetto his light-squared bishop. But as black king is still in the center of the board, Tal played e5, in hope of opening up the center and targeting black king. D takes e5, f takes e5, knight d5, bishop takes e7, and knight takes c3. This is the best move. Otherwise, if move like knight takes e7, then white has a powerful move. Can you find the winning move for white? Ready? White can actually go for bishop takes b5 move. If a takes b5, then knight takes b5. Now if queen a5, then after b4, the game is over. The idea is to lure away black queen and checkmate black king. Or after knight takes b5, if queen d7, then white can simply exchange the queens, fork the king and the rook, and win the rook, after which the game is over. Let's go back. That's why after bishop takes e7, we have knight takes c3, bishop f3. So far so good, but it was in here that Larsen made a terrible mistake and played knight takes d1, which is losing on the spot. Instead of knight takes d1, it was better to play knight e2 check. If bishop takes e2, then queen takes e7. If bishop f3, then bishop b7. And after the exchange of bishops on b7, if queen d6, then rook c8 followed by queen c6. Although white has a slightly preferable position, but there are no problems for black. But in our game, after bishop f3, we have knight takes d1. Now comes bishop d6. And after queen c4, Tal played queen b6. The threat is bishop c6 check, and also at some point white can also win the rook on a8. Knight f2, and here we go, we have this bishop c6 check. Bishop d7, bishop takes d7, king takes d7, queen b7 check, and once the black king stepped on the 8th rank, Tal won black rook. Queen takes a8 check. Queen c8, but after queen a7, Larsen resigned. With his last move, white both created a mating threat and at the same time attacked the knight on f2. Now if queen c6, then simply queen takes f2, white has an extra piece, and this is going to be an easy win. That's why after queen a7, Larsen resigned. Another interesting and aggressive game by the magician from Riga. Larsen made only one mistake, but it turned out that that was the crucial point of the game, after which Larsen's position collapsed. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this game. For more games, consider subscribing to my channel. I will see you in the next video. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I would like to share with you another hyper aggressive attacking game played by legendary chess grandmaster Mikhail Tal. His opponent is Martins Neighbouls, and this game was played in 1959 at Latvian Olympiad. Without further ado, let's go for the game and see what happened on the board. Tal had white pieces and he opened up with e4 and c5 by Neighbouls' Sicilian defense. d4, c takes d4 and c3. Mikhail Tal goes for Smith-Morra gambit. White sacrifices a pawn to develop his pieces quickly and create attacking chances. A very promising start, and let's see what's going to happen next. D takes c3, knight takes c3, knight c6, knight f3, d6, bishop c4, e6, white castles kingside, knight f6, queen e2. Tal is freeing the d1 square for the rook, a standard idea in Smith-Morra gambit. a6, black is preventing any possible knight b5 jumps. We have rook d1, queen c7, bishop f4, knight e5, bishop goes back on b3, bishop e7, rook c1, and black is moving away his queen from this dangerous c5. Now comes knight d4, Tal is bringing his knight on a more active square, after which we have bishop g3. This time Tal is freeing the f4 square for the pawn. Knight d7, f4 and e5. A terrible mistake by Martins Neighbouls, which allows white to gain advantage. It was better first to play g6, take under control this f5 square, and only then, if possible, go for e5. But in our game after f4 we have e5 straight away. And as this f5 square is free, we have knight f5, rook e8, and this time queen c4. This time Tal is targeting the pawn on f7. Yes, already at this point, if we have a look at the board, it's difficult to find a good continuation, and black's position is terrible. Here Neighbouls played d5, temporarily blocked the queen's diagonal, and then after knight takes d5 announced a check from c5, but these are desperate attempts and can't save black. We have king h1, the threat is now knight takes f6, and then queen takes f7, queen g7, checkmate. That's why black responded with rook e6, but this move actually gave birth to a brilliant combination, which Mikhail Tal brought into life in a devastating way. You can pause the video and try to find his next moves. Ready? In this position, Tal played queen takes c5. Look at this brutal queen sacrifice, guys. Did you find this move? He's simply exploiting the weakness of the 8th rank. The queen is untouchable, because if knight takes c5, then knight takes f6 check is coming, after which the rook is penetrating the 8th rank and it's over. Black king is getting checkmated. In our game after queen takes c5, we have knight takes d5, and Tal simply recaptured with the rook. Still the queen is hanging, but there is a back rank weakness. E takes f4 was played, after which we have knight e7 check. King f8, well, if king h8, then simply bishop takes f4. The bishop is untouchable because of this queen takes c8 move. In our game after knight e7 check, we have king f8. Black is attacking white knight, but here Tal went for another destructive move. This time he captured the knight on d7. Look at this, guys. Bishop takes d7, and after bishop takes e6, finally Martins Neighbouls resigned. It's difficult to find a good continuation for black. You can't even recapture. You will lose your queen. That's why after bishop takes e6, understanding that his position is totally lost, black resigned. Another beautiful and aggressive attack by Mikhail Tal. That queen takes c5 move was simply awesome, and I hope that you enjoyed that move greatly. Thanks for watching. For more games, consider subscribing to my channel. Also press the bell button to get notified about new uploads. I will see you in my next video. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have a fantastic game for you played by Mikhail Tal against Robert Forbes. The game was played in 1988 in Chicago. Let's see how the game went on. Tal started with e4, c5 by Forbes, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 and g6. Black goes for dragon variation. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, black castles, and bishop c4. Mikhail Tal goes for this razor-sharp Yugoslav attack. Knight d7, h4, and Tal is starting an attack on the king side. Knight b6, bishop b3, knight a5, h5, trying to open up the h file and target black king. Knight c4, queen e2, knight takes e3, queen takes e3, and knight takes b3. Black is exchanging his knights with these dangerous bishops, and now black has a strong bishop pair. Bishop d7, white castles queenside, and a dubious decision by black e6. Well, actually rook c8 looks more natural, but instead we see e6, which is weakening the d6 square, and also this gives white an easy chance to target black's king side. Here comes f4, white is planning to bring the pawn to f5 square, queen b6 and f5. G takes f5, e takes f5, king h8, now comes rook f1, white is threatening f6 and winning the bishop. Bishop takes d4, rook takes d4, e5, and now comes a strong move by Mikhail Tal. You can pause the video and try to find his next move. As you can see, the rook on d4 is attacked, but Tal is not going to move that rook. He plays queen h6, sacrificing the rook. Black captured on d4. By the way, if a move like e takes d4, then after queen f6 check, king g8, white can play h6 and black king is getting checkmated. Let's go back. After queen h6, we see queen takes d4, queen f6 check, king g8, and now comes another amazing move, knight d5. Well, if you play h6, then already black has this defensive resource, queen g4, covering the g7 square. Instead, Tal played knight d5. Now the threat is knight e7 checkmate. Now you can't accept the sacrifice and capture on d5 because after queen g5 check, king h8, white can play h6. The threat is queen f6 check. You have to give up your queen and it's over, white is winning. Let's go back. After knight d5, we see rook e8, which is a bad move. A better move was placing the rook on c8, opening up a space for the king to escape. But this rook e8 move is blocking the king's path. Here comes queen g5 check, king h8. Well, if king f8, then queen h6 check is winning. If king g8, then knight f6 check, followed by queen takes h7 checkmate. Let's go back. After queen g5 check, we see king h8, and now comes h6. White is simply threatening to checkmate black king. e4, opening up the queen's diagonal, and now comes f6, blocking this diagonal. Rook g8, but now comes another amazing move by Mikhail Tal. You can pause the video and try to find his next move. Ready? Tal played queen g7 check, sacrificing the queen. Black captured on g7. Here comes h takes g7 check. Of course not f takes g7 check, because after queen takes g7, h takes g7, king takes g7, black has two extra pawns. But instead, Tal played h takes g7 check, king g8, and here comes this fantastic knight e7 checkmate. What a beautiful checkmate by Mikhail Tal. Your comments and questions, please. What do you think about this mighty attack by Mikhail Tal? Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful attacking game for you played by Rashid Najmetdinov against Yermolin. The game was played in 1946 in Kazan. Najmetdinov, who was a very fierce attacking player, started with e4, c5 by Yermolin, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6, black is going for dragon variation, and there it goes, f4. Nejmetdinov is meeting the dragon with 11-fish variation, which is named after Russian Grandmaster Grigory Levenfish. The f-pawn is coming to support the e-pawn in order to push it further and attack black knight. Bishop g7, and there it goes, we see e5. The best move for black is now placing the knight on h5 square, but instead after e5 we see d takes e5, f takes e5, and after knight d5 black is facing serious problems. It was better to place the knight on d7, though after e6, knight e5, e takes f7 check, knight takes f7, bishop b5 check, still white has a slight advantage, but instead after f takes e5 we see knight d5, and after bishop b5 check it turns out that black is forced to move his king. Otherwise, if you play bishop d7, then the knight is no longer protected by the queen and white can capture on d5. That's why after bishop b5 check, black is forced to make this unpleasant choice and move the king. White castles kingside, and now this rook on f5 can cause black a lot of problems. Bishop takes e5, and while black is busy with grabbing pawns, Nejmetdinov is attacking. Bishop h6 check and king g8. Well, if bishop g7, then knight takes d5 is very strong. Well, if queen takes d5, then white can either capture on g7 giving a check and then simply win the queen, or after queen takes d5 play bishop c4, a powerful deflective move. You can't capture because white can play knight e6 check, open up the d file, and if bishop takes e6 then queen d8 checkmate. Or after knight takes d5, if a move like bishop takes h6, then queen f3 threatening checkmate in 1, if f5 then rook e1, bishop g7, white can capture on f5 and then play g4, and this is going to be a destructive attack. The black king is stuck on f8 square while all white pieces are attacking. Let's go back, but after bishop h6 check we see king g8. Here comes knight takes d5, queen takes d5, and a powerful move by Nejmetdinov, knight f5. White has a very simple threat, knight takes e7, checkmate, also the queen is hanging. For example, if queen takes d1, then knight takes e7, checkmate. After knight f5 we see queen c5 check, bishop e3, covering the king, attacking the queen, and still threatening checkmate in 1. Queen c7 covering the d8 square, but here comes knight h6 check and Yermolin resigned. If king g7, then simply rook takes f7, checkmate. If you enjoyed this beautiful attack by Rashid Nejmetdinov, don't forget to give the thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. More games are coming. Thanks for watching and I wish you good luck. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and I have another very aggressive attacking game for you played by Robert James Fischer against Jacek Bednarski. The game was played at 1966 Havana Chess Olympiad. Robert Fischer had white pieces and he started with e4, c5 by Bednarski, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, black is going for neither variation, and bishop c4. Fischer goes for this aggressive Fischer-Sozin attack, which was introduced by Veniamin Sozin in the 1930s, and then Bobby Fischer started to regularly adopt it. e6 was played, black is blocking the bishop's diagonal, bishop b3, knight d7. Actually, black is choosing probably the best continuation for black. With this beautiful knight maneuver, black is bringing the knight on c5 square, from where it will both put pressure on e4 square, and also at some point black can get rid of this dangerous light square. Bishop f4 was played, knight c5, and here we go f5. Of course, Fischer is playing very aggressively and instantly he's trying to organize an attack. Knight takes e4 was played, black is accepting the pawn sacrifice, which leads to very complex positions. Actually, playing knight b3 and then bishop e7 would have been more solid. Instead, we see knight takes e4, f takes e6, and seeking active counterplay, Bednarski blundered and played queen h4 check. Well, it was better to play bishop takes e6. If knight takes e4, then after knight takes e4, knight takes e6, only now play queen h4 check. If g3, then knight takes g3. If bishop g5, then queen e4 check. If king d2, then knight takes h1, knight c7, king d7, knight takes a8. Though in his book My 60 Memorable Games, Fischer says that the position is winning for white, but the engine evaluates the position as equal and suggests queen g2 check. The queen is coming after the pawn on g5 square. If king c3, then queen takes g5. If knight b6 check, then simply king d8. And if you win this knight, then black can play queen a5 check, winning back the lost piece. But after f takes e6, queen h4 check was played. g3, knight takes g3. Of course, this line leads to mind-blowing complications, and it turns out that the one who is managing to gain advantage from all that is Bobby Fischer. Knight f3, queen h5, e takes f7 check, king d8, rook g1, knight f5, knight d5. Gradually, white pieces are getting more and more active. Queen takes f7, bishop g5 check. As Fischer wrote in his book My 60 Memorable Games, black's attack has boomeranged. Now his king gets caught in a merciless crossfire. King e8, queen e2 check, bishop e6, knight f4. White is intensifying the pressure on e6 square, king d7, and now Fischer calm-heartedly castles queenside with a deadly knight e5 threat, forking the king and the queen. Queen e8, black is moving away the queen from this dangerous f7 square, but now comes bishop takes e6 check, and after knight takes e6, here comes the queen, queen e4. Both attacking the knight, also the pawn on b7. g6 was played, and after knight takes e6, Bednarski resigned. If queen takes e6, then queen takes b7. If king e8, then rook e1 below support black's position. If queen takes e1, then rook takes e1 check, and then black king is simply getting checkmated. That's why, as I've already mentioned, after knight takes e6, understanding that his position is hopeless, Bednarski resigned. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this aggressive attack. Here are more suggestions for you, and for more games, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have a fantastic game for you played by Mikhail Tal against Alexander Koblenz. The game was played in 1965. Let's see how the game went on. Tal started with e4 and c5 by Koblenz, Sicilian defense. Knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 and d6. Koblenz goes for Scheveningen variation. Bishop e3, knight c6, f4, bishop e7, queen f3, black castles, bishop e2, bishop d7, white castles queenside, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, bishop c6, g4, queen a5, g5, knight d7, rook g1, b5, queen h5, b4. Now, as you can see, the knight on c3 is attacked, but here comes a very aggressive move by Mikhail Tal. He's not even going to move this knight. Rook d3. By the way, engines are offering another crazy move, knight d5. If e takes d5, then here comes this fantastic queen h6 move. The idea is that if g takes h6, then after g takes h6, black king is getting checkmated. Let's go back. After queen h6, the best move for black is knight e5, and after bishop takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes c6, queen takes a2, queen a6, the edges are giving black a slight advantage. Let's go back. After b4 we see rook d3, black accepted the sacrifice, and now comes bishop takes c3. Queen takes a2, well, this is losing. Black could actually gain initiative by playing queen a4. If rook h3, then bishop takes e4, both covering the h7 square and also threatening checkmate in one. Now if bishop d3, then bishop takes d3, c takes d3, queen takes f4 check, king b1, and queen f5, and the queen is managing to protect black king. White can go for this funky bishop takes g7 move, but after rook c8, this is winning for black. By the way, black can't accept the sacrifice because after queen h6 check, king g8, white has this g6 move, cutting the queen's diagonal, and black king is simply getting checkmated. Let's go back. But after bishop takes c3, Koblenz played queen takes a2. Now comes rook h3, threatening checkmate in one. Bishop takes e4. Looks like Koblenz is managing to protect his king. But now Mikhail Tal goes for a fantastic combination. You can pause the video and try to find his next moves. Ready? Well, first Tal played g6, cutting the bishop's diagonal. Now if h6, then after g takes f7 check, rook takes f7, queen takes h6, white is checkmating black king. Let's go back. After g6, Koblenz played bishop takes g6, but now comes a fantastic queen sacrifice. Queen takes h7 check. Bishop takes h7. Did you find that move? Rook takes g7 check. King h8 and rook takes h7 checkmate. What an outrageous checkmate by Mikhail Tal. Your comments and questions please, and if you liked this beautiful checkmate, don't forget to give the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. More videos are coming. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Sulen here, and in this video I would like to share with you a very aggressive attacking game played by Sven Pedersen against Peter Gallmeier. The game was played in 1971 in Hjørring. But before starting our game, I would like to warm up your brain. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning move for white. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Back to our main board, and now let's see what happened in our game. Pedersen opened up with e4 and Gallmeier player responded with Sicilian defense c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and a6. Black goes for Najdorf variation, and against Najdorf, white chose the main line. Bishop g5, e6, f4, b5, and there it goes. e5 is on the board. D takes e5, f takes e5, and queen c7. And after e takes f6, we have queen e5 check, and black won back the sacrificed piece. This is actually a well-known line seen many times. Here white castled kingside, queen e5. In this position usually white is playing knight f3, but in our game we have bishop f3, which is also a normal move. The rook is hanging with rook a7 and knight c6. Here black played queen c5 check, but could also capture on c6 and then cover the king with a light squared bishop. But in our game we have queen c5 check, king h1. And now if a move like knight takes c6, then white has this knight e4 move and black can't win a piece. If queen b6, then this can even be worse. White can capture on g7 and then announce a check from d6. Or after knight d4, if queen d4, then white has this knight d6 check. Now black should play king d8, but after bishop takes c6, white has a huge advantage. And actually, queen takes d6 can't be played because of this f takes g7. Let's go back. In our game after king h1, we have rook d7. Right now the queen on d1 is hanging, but in here, Sven Pedersen went for knight takes b8. I knew that you could find this move in a blink of a second. That's why I decided not to ask you to find the queen sacrifice. Rook takes d1 was played, rook takes d1. Already there is a very nasty bishop c6 threat, right? That's why black played g takes f6, and we have knight e4. New forces are joining the attack, and a mistake by Gallmeier, queen c7, after which black's position collapses quickly. It was better to play queen f5, and now if knight takes f6 check, then simply queen takes f6, and if bishop c6 check, then king e7, and in the end of the day the players have equal chances. But in our game we have queen c7. By the way, playing queen e7 is also a bad idea because of this knight c6, and if you move away your queen, then you can get checkmated. In our game after knight e4 we have queen c7, and now comes knight takes f6 check, king e7, and this time we have bishop h5. Another powerful move, and actually the knight is untouchable because black king can get checkmated. White can sacrifice his second knight and then can checkmate black king. After bishop h5, black played bishop g7, but this taps into a beautiful combination. Here Pedersen first played knight c6 check, and after luring away the queen which was covering the d8 square, he played knight g8. Yes, he goes for a second knight sacrifice, and this leads to a checkmate. King e8 was played. Well, if rook g8, then again in this case black king is getting checkmated. And then rook takes e8 checkmate. In our game we have king e8 and bishop takes f7 check, king f8, and after rook d8 check we have a resignation. If queen e8, then rook takes e8, and we have a brutal checkmate on the board. A very brutal position, right? Look at this black king entangled in a mating net. Thanks for watching. If you liked this game, give the thumbs up. For more games, consider subscribing to my channel. Also, press the bell button to get notified about new uploads. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful and short game for you played by Mikhail Tal. Unfortunately, the name of his opponent is unknown. The game was played in 1963 and Mikhail Tal started with e4, c5 by black Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 and a6. Black goes for neither variation. Here comes bishop g5, e6, f4, b5. This is the Polugaevsky variation. And Mikhail Tal went for this aggressive e5 move. D takes e5, f takes e5, queen c7, queen e2. Well, the idea of queen c7 is that if e takes f6, then black can play queen e5 check, winning back the lost piece. But instead we see queen e2 protecting the pawn on e5, knight retreats back and white castles queenside. Bishop b7, and now comes a very aggressive move by Mikhail Tal. He played knight takes e6, f takes e6, and queen g4 attacking the pawn on e6. So far so good, black was playing a very good game, but in this position black made a mistake and played queen b6. It was better to play queen takes e5, but probably black decided not to expose the center too much. Though of course even after this move white is still retaining attacking chances. But instead after queen g4 we see queen b6. Now comes a very beautiful move by Mikhail Tal. You can pause the video and try to find his next move. Ready? Tal played rook d6, cutting this queen from protecting the pawn on e6. Black captured on d6, and now comes queen takes e6 check, king f8, and now comes another amazing move. Can you find that move? Ready? Tal played bishop c4, threatening checkmate in one, but actually right now the bishop is hanging. But on the other hand, at the same time, white rook is also managing to join the attack. Black captured on c4, and now comes rook f1 check, knight f6, and now comes rook takes f6 check, g takes f6, and bishop h6 checkmate. This is move 19. What a fantastic attacking game by Mikhail Tal. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful game for you played by Rudolf Spielmann against Rudolf Hermet. The game was played in 1927. Let's see how the game went on. Spielmann started with e4 and e6 by Hermet. Black goes for French defense, d4, d5, knight d2 Tarrasch variation. Black captures on e4, knight takes e4, knight d7, knight f3, knight f6, knight takes f6 check, knight takes f6, bishop d3, h6, queen e2, bishop d6, bishop d2, and we see castling on opposite sides. Bishop d7, knight e5, and a dubious decision by black c5. And after capturing on c5, black captures on e5. If bishop takes c5, then g4 can be very unpleasant for black. White is starting an immediate attack on the king side. That's why we see bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, bishop c6, and this pawn on c5 is simply becoming a very unpleasant material for black. Now comes bishop f4, white is threatening bishop h7 check, winning the queen. Queen e7, queen d4, rook d8, and the bishop jumps to d6 square. Queen e8, rook g1, getting rid of this pin and preparing g4, g5. b6, queen h4, b takes c5, bishop e5, putting pressure on f6, queen e7, and now goes the g pawn. c4, and g5. Paying no attention that the bishop on d3 is hanging, white attacks the knight. Black played knight d7, but if h takes g5, then after queen takes g5, this is very dangerous for black. g6 can't be played because the knight on f6 is hanging. Let's go back. After g5 we see knight d7, but this knight d7 move allows white to go for a fantastic combination. You can pause the video and try to find white's next moves. Ready? Of course, in this position you can't capture on h6 because your queen is hanging. That's why after knight d7, white played a fantastic move. Queen takes h6, sacrificing the queen. Black accepted the sacrifice, and here comes g takes h6 check. King f8, and in this position white played a move and black resigned. Can you find white's next move? White played rook g8 check and black resigned. Well, if king takes g8, then h7 check followed by h8 rook checkmate. Just a fantastic combination by Rudolf Spielmann. Your comments please, and thanks for watching. Hello chess lovers, let's have a look at a fantastic game played by Simon Williams against Christopher Darrington. The game was played in 2004 and this was a rapid game. Christopher Darrington started with e4, c5 by Simon Williams, Sicilian defense, knight c3, knight c6, knight e2, g6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop g7, bishop e3, d6. Simon Williams goes for this aggressive dragon variation. Knight f6, f3, bishop d7, white castles, rook c8, king b1, knight e5, g4, and white is starting an immediate pawn storm on the king side. Black castles, h4, b5, and h5. Capturing on b5 can be very dangerous for white. For example, after rook b8, if knight c3, then black can go for this knight takes f3 sacrifice. If knight takes f3, then black can sacrifice the second knight as well. The whole idea is to open up some space for this bishop to attack. If knight takes e4, then white can even get checkmated after rook b2 check, king c1, rook b1 check, king takes b1, and now comes the queen and white king is getting checkmated. That's why after b5 we see h5, knight takes f3. Again, this is a very standard sacrifice in dragon variation. Knight takes f3, bishop takes g4, bishop e2, b4, knight d5, knight takes e4, and a very passive move by white, queen e1. Actually, nowadays the best move is considered queen takes b4. If rook b8, then queen takes e4, and if rook takes b2 check, then king c1, bishop f5, and now white can go for this beautiful queen sacrifice. Queen takes f5. If g takes f5, then h6, rook takes a2, h takes g7, rook e8, bishop d4, e5, bishop c3. According to the engines, this is winning for white, but actually from a human perspective, this is a double-edged position. Black has 4 pawns and a queen against 4 pieces, so this can lead to a very sharp game. But instead, after knight takes e4, we see this passive queen e1 move. Now comes e6, kicking this knight away, knight f4, queen a5, knight d4, bishop f5, and a bad move by white, knight b3. It was very important to capture on f5 and get rid of this dangerous bishop. But this knight b3 move allows Simon Williams to go for one of the most amazing combinations the chess world has ever seen. Can you find his next move? Ready? He played rook takes c2. Now both the rook and also the queen are hanging. White played knight takes a5, but if king takes c2, then after queen takes a2, this is just winning for black. Right now the pawn on b2 is hanging. Also there is this dangerous rook c8 threat. If rook b1, then rook c8 check, bishop c5, knight takes c5, king d2, black can capture on b3, it's all over. But instead, after rook takes c2, we see knight takes a5 in the game. Now comes another beautiful move. Can you find black's next move? Ready? Simon Williams played knight d2 check, sacrificing the knight as well. Queen takes d2, rook takes b2, double check, king c1 and rook b1. We see this amazing checkmate on the board. Just a fantastic combination by Simon Williams. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you a fascinating chess miniature played by Mikhail Tal. The magician is on the white side and his opponent is Bulgarian chess player Georgy Tringov. The game was played in 1988 at the 13th Munich Chess Olympiad. The Soviet team, which was representing Botvinnik, Smyslov, Keres, Bronstein, Tal, Petrosyan, won the Olympiad without facing a serious resistance. In this video I want to share with you a game which is taken from a match played between Soviet Union and Bulgaria. Tal opened up with e4 and Tringov responded with c5. Another Sicilian, and this is interesting guys, you know. Very often when I'm publishing games played by Mikhail Tal, we see Sicilian defense. Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6. Tringov goes for neither variation. Here we have the main line, bishop g5, e6, f4, h6. Not the most popular continuation. Usually black is playing queen b6 or bishop e7, but in our game we have h6, bishop h4, queen b6, and knight b3. It's interesting that Tal is not choosing the sharpest line and instead is moving back his knight on b3, thus allowing black to announce a check from e3. Though I have to tell you that knight b3 also leads to a double-edged game where white is sacrificing a pawn. Queen e3 check was played, bishop e2 and queen takes f4, though black could also win this pawn on e4 but preferred the f-pawn. Here we have bishop g3, queen e3, and bishop takes d6. White is winning back the sacrificed pawn, but still, black has something more to munch. Knight c6 and rook f1. What is interesting, 2 days later, during that same Olympiad, Tal would play this line with the black pieces against Jiri Fichtel, where the latter, instead of playing rook f1, would choose bishop takes f8. According to the engine, this is a more precise continuation, but even in this case, Tal managed to beat his opponent with the black pieces. But in our game after knight c6, Tal played rook f1, allowed knight takes e4. Here we have the exchange of knights on e4, and bishop takes f8. White sacrificed the pawn, but now let's see where is White's compensation. Though I have to tell you that in this game we won't manage to see a real struggle, because after king f2, black made a terrible blunder. By playing king f2, Tal wants to castle by hand, but in this game Tringo failed to show an adequate resistance, and in here he made this losing bishop d7 move. Instead, it was better first to move away his queen from this vulnerable e4 square and only then play bishop d7. But in our game we have this terrible bishop d7, and in here Tal made a move after which black could already resign. I'm not even going to ask you to find the winning move for white, because I'm sure that as you have solved so many chess puzzles, in a blink of a second you managed to see the winning move for white. And that move is queen takes d7. Just one question, guys. How could Georgi Tringov overlook this threat? The thing is that after king takes d7, Tal is forking the royal family, and in the end of the day, white is simply a piece up. After f5, knight c5, black resigned, because we are in the endgame where white has an extra piece and can convert it into a victory very easily. Well, in the end, as usual, let's solve a chess puzzle. This time I have a thematic chess puzzle where I can even give you a hint. You have to find the forking motive, and it's white to move. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Feel free to check out these suggestions as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you another sparkling chess miniature. This game was played between Alexander Hofmann and Josef Richter in 1975 in Munich. But before starting our game, first want to share with you a chess puzzle. This is an easy one, and I am sure that in a blink of a second you managed to find the winning move for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Back to our main board, and now without further ado, let's get started with this game and see what happened on the board. Hoffmann opened up with e4 and Richter responded with Sicilian defense c5, knight c3, knight c6, g3. White is going for closed Sicilian. Meanwhile we have e6, bishop g2, knight f6, knight e2, d5, e takes d5, e takes d5, and d4. Bishop g4 and d takes c5. Of course, well, white could also play bishop e3. This is a more ambitious try, a move which Huifan played against Anna Muzichuk in 2014. But in our game we have d takes c5 straight away. Bishop takes c5. Black got an isolated pawn, but of course there's nothing wrong with black's position. But the isolated pawn turned out to be so tempting that white decided to win it on the spot and played knight takes d5. A terrible mistake, after which white's position collapses quickly. Instead, it was better to simply castle kingside, but in our game we have knight takes d5. And using the fact that this knight on e2 is pinned, black played knight d4 and intensified the pin. White played knight takes f6 check. Well, if we move like knight c3 in order to strengthen the knight on e2, then this time black can play queen a5 and can pin the knight. If white castles kingside, then rook d8 can be very unpleasant. The threat is knight takes e2, and it's not quite clear how is white going to save this position. White's position is totally lost. Or after queen a5, if bishop d2, then this time black can castle queenside. If h3, then knight f3 check is coming. And after the exchange on f3, castling kingside, black has this rook e8 move, and pins are all over the board, you know. If rook e1, this time queen b6. And black is winning. Let's go back, but in our game after knight d4 we have knight takes f6 check, queen takes f6, and f3, a desperate attempt with which white wants to break up the pin, but it was in here that Richter shocked his opponent with a staggering move. You can pause the video and try to find black's next move. Ready? Well, look in here, even the simple knight takes f3 allows black to win the game, but after f3, Josef Richter captured on f3 with the queen. This is of course a more precise and devastating continuation, you know, guys. Right now, black wants to play queen takes g2, right? With his last move, black attacked white bishop. What's going on the board, guys? White accepted the queen sacrifice, but this steps into a checkmate. Here comes knight takes f3 check, and after king f1 we have a brutal checkmate on the board. These three minor pieces are simply killing white king. What a final combination. Well, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this miniature, share it with your friends. In the end, here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, Soren here, and in this video I want to share with you a brilliant chess miniature played by Greek international chess master Vasilios Kotroutsos. His opponent is Greek woman international master Alexandra Stiri, and the game was played in 2005 at the 9th Heraclea Open. But before starting our game, first want to sharpen your tactical skills. Please take a look at this position and try to find the winning move for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Back to our main board, and now without further ado, let's get started with this fascinating miniature and see what happened on the board. Kotroutsos opened up with e4 and Styria responded with Sicilian defense c5, knight f3, e6 and b3. White is choosing Western attack, which sometimes can serve as a nice surprise weapon, you know. White's intention is obvious, to fianchetto his queenside bishop and then later put useful pressure on black's kingside. Here we have b6, which is actually the main response, and d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop b7, knight b5. White knight is jumping on b5 in order to try to exploit the weaknesses of the dark squares, and a6. Well, a passive defensive move. Instead it was better to play d5. Why not? This looks very active. But I guess black didn't go for d5 in view of this bishop f4 move. But to bishop f4 black has queen f4 move, and black is going to win. Checks like knight c7 are not dangerous. Black can always move for king on d8, and black is doing great. But in our game after knight b5 we have a6. Here we have knight d6 check, bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, bishop takes e4, bishop a3. Well, black won a pawn, but white has now the total control over the a3 f8 diagonal, and it's not quite clear how is black going to castle. Knight f6 was played. Here we have knight d2. This knight is coming on c4 with some intentions of exploiting the dark squares further. Knight c6, knight c4, and b5. This is a terrible move which steps into a checkmate. Well, black is overlooking white's threat, and it was better to block the long diagonal. If queen takes b6, then queen takes b6, and then black can play rook b8 followed by bishop takes c2. Black is doing okay, but in our game after knight c4 we have b5, and as I've already mentioned, this is losing. In here, please pause the video and try to find the mating line for white. Ready? Well, I think that the solution is very easy, and the winning move just asks itself to be played. In here, Vasilios Kotroutsos played queen f8 check and black resigned. How do you like this queen sacrifice, guys? Honestly, when I first saw this move, I was really surprised, you know. This looks very beautiful. A majestic queen sacrifice, right? Now the thing is that after rook takes f8, this white knight is jumping into the game. The knight was just in time, right on c4, and after this forced king e7, white can announce a double check and then can win the pawn on g7, thus announcing a checkmate. A brilliant finish, right? Let's take a look at that queen sacrifice once again. And then the knight is coming, and together with the dark squared bishop is managing to kill the enemy king. Well, thanks for watching, dear chess lovers. If you like this final queen sacrifice, feel free to share it with your friends as well. In the end, here are more suggestions for you, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers! Ukrainian chess prodigy 9-year-old Tikhon Chernyaev recently broke 2700 bullet rating mark on lichess.org, and today I want to share with you one of his bullet games played online. In this game his opponent is a pretty strong player, playing under nickname VBatman2004. His rating is 2542, and at the time of this game Tikhon's rating was 2664. Chernyaev was playing with the white pieces opened up with e4, and black responded with Sicilian defense. As this was a bullet game, we will go quickly through the game. Just let's cover the game and see how Tikhon managed to beat his opponent. We have the open Sicilian, where instead of knight takes d4, which is the main continuation, white is capturing on d4 with the queen. This is Chekhov variation, knight c6, queen e3. Another popular alternative is bishop b5. This is the main move, but in our game we have bishop e3, knight f6, h3, preventing any knight g4 jumps, e6, b3. White is going to flank to his queenside bishop, bishop e7, bishop b2, black castles, c4. We have a Maroczy bind, which is not really good, you know, in here, because by going for d5, black could free his position and create some problems for white. But in our game after c4 we have bishop d7, knight c3, rook c8, bishop e2, a6, white castles, kingside. Yes, black played passively, didn't use his chance, didn't go for that d5 move, and now white is doing just great. Rook d1, knight d5, rook c1, knight takes f3, bishop takes f3, bishop c6, knight a4. Well, white wants to play knight b6, but this is not good because no one will allow the knight to jump on b6. This steps into bishop a4. Instead, it was better to play a move like knight d5. If e takes d5, then pawn takes d5. But in our game, we have knight a4 and black captured the knight. B takes a4, queen a5, queen b3. We have a target on b7, rook c7, bishop c3, queen c5, bishop b4, and a mistake by black, queen b6, which is allowing white to win a pawn. Instead, it was better to put the queen on g5 and keep an eye on this rook on c1. In this case, white can't win a pawn because in the end of the day will lose his rook. But in our game, we have queen b6, and without meeting any obstacles, white simply munched that pawn. Here, all black could do was to capture on b3. We have the exchange of queens, and white is simply a pawn up and has the total control over the d file. Black is doubling up his rooks on the c file, but there is nothing black can do. e5, knight h5. Well, at least black should have played knight e8. But in our game, we have knight h5, and black will no longer manage to switch his knight into the game. There it goes, we have rook d8 check, and after the exchange of rooks on d8, king g7, we have g3, not allowing any possible knight f4 moves. Yes, white is keeping black knight on the rim. King h6, meanwhile, black wants to somehow activate his knight, but just no way out, you know. After knight g7, we have g4 controlling these essential squares. King g5, a desperate attempt. I don't know what was in black's mind. Now this is even worse. There are some mating threats, like h4 check followed by g5 checkmate. Black played h5, but after h4, king h6, Chernyaev announced a checkmate by playing rook h8. A beautiful checkmate, right? Well, probably we should cover more games by Chernyaev. If you have any good suggestions, leave your comments, please. And in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle, which is taken from one of Chernyaev's online games. It's white to move and win the game. I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful game for you played by Dmitry Stets against Mikhailo Oleksienko. The game was played in 2009 in Lvov. Let's see how the game went on. Stets started with e4 and c5 by Oleksienko, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, bishop e3 and e6. Black goes for Scheveningen variation. Queen d2, b5, f3. White chooses English attack to fight against Scheveningen. Knight d7 and g4. Knight b6, white castles queenside. Bishop b7, bishop d3. Rook c8, king b1. Knight d7, g5, b4. This is all standard stuff. White is attacking on the king side and black is attacking on the queen side. Knight e2, d5, again a very standard move in the Sicilian defense. Knight g3, knight c5, queen f2, queen c7, knight b3, knight a4, e takes d5, bishop takes d5, bishop d4. Now this bishop both can protect white king and also is putting pressure on this diagonal, and for black developing this bishop is becoming very problematic. Knight takes d3, rook takes d3, knight c5, rook d2. In some variations this rook can be very useful to protect the c2 square. Knight takes b3, a takes b3, queen f4, rook f1, queen takes g5, which is allowing white to push this f-pawn, f4, and after queen g4 this pawn is running further, f5. As you have noticed, black king is stuck in the center of the board and now white is going to rip open black king. Bishop e7 and now comes f6. Look at this pawn. G takes f6, bishop takes f6, bishop c5, queen e1, pinning the pawn on e6 and threatening rook takes d5. Also, as you can see, the rook on h8 is also hanging. Black castled kingside, avoiding both threats. But anyways, here comes a strong move by white. Rook takes d5, going for an exchange sacrifice. And after e takes d5, this pawn is no longer controlling the f5 square and white knight jumps to f5. Right now the threat is knight h6 checkmate. Black played queen g6. Looks like black has solved all the problems, but in this position, Dmitry Stets made a move and black resigned. You can pause the video and try to find his next move. Ready? As you can see, this g1 square is controlled by the bishop and the queen. But here comes an amazing rook g1 move, a powerful destructive move, and black resigned. The idea is that if you capture on g1 with a queen, then white knight is checkmating from h6 square. Or if you capture on g1 with the bishop, then this bishop is no longer covering the e7 square and the knight can jump to e7 square checkmating black king. That's why, as I have already mentioned, after rook g1, black resigned because either black is getting checkmated or black will lose his queen. What a beautiful deflecting move by Dmitry Stets. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Hello chess lovers, I have a very interesting game for you played by a Ukrainian chess grandmaster Anna Muzychuk. Her opponent is a Romanian woman grandmaster Corina Peptan. This was a rapid game and was played at King's Tournament 2017. Muzychuk started with e4 and c5 by Peptan, Sicilian defense, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, a6, Peptan goes for Khan variation, c4, knight f6, knight c3, bishop b4, queen d3, protecting the pawn on e4, queen c7, a3, bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, and overlooking white's next threat, Peptan captured on e4. But now it turns out that the pawn on e4 was poisoned. You can pause the video and try to find the best move for white. Ready? Muzychuk played knight b5, offering a whole knight. At the same time, this knight is now attacking the queen on c7 and also white is opening up the queen's diagonal. The idea is that if knight takes c3, then knight takes c7, forking the king and the rook, and this is winning for white. After knight b5, Peptan accepted the sacrifice. Now comes queen takes g7, rook f8, and here comes the bishop. Again, this rook is under attack. Queen c5, f3, and now it turns out that this knight on e4 has no safe square. You can't place your knight on d6 because you will close the queen's diagonal. We see b takes c4 and bishop takes c4. White is not hurrying to win this knight. Knight f6, and only now white is capturing on f6. Now as you can see, the bishop on c4 is hanging, but capturing on c4 can be very dangerous because white can capture on f8, and if king takes f8, then queen d8 check, king g7 and queen g5 check. placing the queen on g5 from where it can support white rook. If king f8, then here comes rook c1, and this is winning for white. Let's go back. That's why after queen takes f6, we see rook g8, bishop d3, queen e7, and bishop j7. Well, a better move was keeping the queens on the board, playing queen c3 and then castling kingside, because as you can see, black king is in danger. It's not quite clear where is black going to place her king. But instead, after queen e7, we see bishop g7, queen takes f6, bishop takes f6, rook takes g2, white castles queenside, knight c6, rook g1, rook takes g1, rook takes g1, and now white is threatening to checkmate black king. Knight e7 and bishop takes h7, and now white is getting a very strong passed pawn on h file, which is enough to win the game. Rook a4, bishop c2, rook a5, and there it goes, h4, b6, f4, rook h5, bishop d1, rook c5 check, king d2, bishop b7, rook g5, and a bad move by black, rook takes g5. Well, actually black could prolong the game by playing rook d5 check. If rook takes d5, then knight takes d5, though after bishop e5 still white has a huge advantage. This pawn is very dangerous, also white has a strong bishop pair. Let's go back. After rook g5, we see rook takes g5, and now white is capturing on g5 with the f pawn. Now this pawn will support the h pawn. Bishop e4, h5, knight d5, h6. This pawn is simply marching towards the 8th rank. Bishop f5, bishop c2, getting rid of this bishop which was covering the h7 square. Bishop takes c2, king takes c2, and black resigned. Well, if a move like knight takes f6, then g takes f6, and there is no way to stop this pawn. Or if knight f4, then again h7, black is losing her knight, and again white is winning. I hope that you enjoyed this game, especially I think that knight b5 sacrifice was very impressive. Good luck. After winning 2019 World Youth Chess Championship, Indian chess grandmaster Ramesh Babu Pragnanantha is competing at 2019 World Junior Chess Championship, but without much success. In round 8 he suffered the second loss in this tournament, and in this video I want to share that same game played in round 8 against Spanish chess grandmaster Miguel Santos Ruiz. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. In this game, Santos Ruiz was playing with white pieces and he opened up with e4. Pragnanantha responded with Sicilian defense c5 and knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and knight c6. We have the 4 knights variation, and knight takes c6. White is going for the exchange variation. B takes c6, e5, knight d5, knight e4. Later in this line, usually white is trying to exploit the weakness of the dark squares. Here black played rook b8, but this is a very rare continuation. Usually in here black is proceeding either with queen c7 or bishop b7 or queen a5 check. But in our game we have rook b8. Here comes bishop d3, queen c7, the pawn is under attack, we have f4 and queen b6. Black is emphasizing the vulnerability of g1 a7 diagonal, queen e2, bishop e7, c4. White wants to kick away the knight from this perfect outpost, but in return black counterattacked white knight on e4. Here we have knight d6 check, bishop takes d6, e takes d6, knight goes back on f6 and b3. There was too much pressure on b2, which was hindering the development of the dark squared bishop. That's why Santos goes for b3. in order to fianchetto his bishop, bishop b2, and later this monster on b2 will play an essential role in the game. a5, and a very risky but at the same time interesting decision by Santos Ruiz, castling queenside. With this move he demonstrates that he's ready for a sharp battle and he's not afraid of black's attack. a4, bishop c2, a takes b3, a takes b3, and c5. It turns out that c5 is a mistake, after which black's position collapses quickly. Instead, it was better to make a prophylactic move like rook f7, but in our game we have c5, with which black is opening up the long diagonal in order to fianchetto the light-squared bishop, but this taps into a mighty attack. Here we go g4. By the way, I have to tell you that instead of playing rook f7 in here, bishop a6 is also playable. Pinning the pawn and preparing a move like knight d5, and then if needed black can even go for queen e3 check, offering the exchange of queens. But in our game c5 was played and a powerful g4 by Santos Ruiz is on the board. With this move white wants to open up the g file and target black king, bishop b7, but let's take a look what if black accepts the pawn sacrifice. Then in this case white can play rook g1 with a direct rook takes g4 threat. If bishop b7 for example, then anyways this rook takes g4 is coming, a mighty exchange sacrifice which is allowing white to open up the g file, and then queen h5. These bishops are simply monsters, guys, and black is in trouble, white is winning. Or after g4, if a move like f takes g4, then again rook g4 with rook takes g4 threat. And if you play a move like h5, then simply h3. And again, black has little chances of saving the game. Let's go back. In our game after g4, Praggnanandhaa played bishop b7 and rook g1. Bishop e4. With this move, black is neutralizing white's light-squared bishop, but is doing it in the cost of giving up a pawn. Bishop takes c2, queen takes c2, e takes f5, and queen takes f5. Right now the threat is rook takes g7. For example, if a move like queen takes b3, then white can checkmate black king in 5 moves. Rook g1 check is coming. If king h8, then queen takes f6. Let's go for a queen sacrifice, guys, and announce a checkmate. Truly a spectacular checkmate, right, guys? Who knows the name of the mating pattern? Please leave your comment. Meanwhile, let's see what happened in our game. After queen takes f5, Praggnanandhaa played this defensive knight e8 move, but even this didn't stop white from going for a rook sacrifice. Actually, the engine says that knight e8 allows white to checkmate black king in 7. Rook takes g7, here we go, guys. This is the first rook sacrifice in this game. Knight takes g7, queen e5, rook f7, and the last piece is also joining the attack. King f8, rook takes g7, queen d8, and the second rook sacrifice in our game, which forced Praggnanandhaa to resign. If king takes g8, then queen h8 checkmate is coming. Truly a brilliant attack by Ruiz Santos, which I hope that you enjoyed greatly. In the end, a chess puzzle for you where the task is to find the winning line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. In the end, feel free to check out these suggestions as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful attacking game for you played by Estonian chess grandmaster Paul Keres. His opponent is Peter Daly and the game was played in 1970 in Kopfenberg. Keres started with e4 and c5 by Daly, Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, g6, black goes for accelerated dragon, and c4 we see the Marcosi bind formation. White's c and e pawns are controlling the d5 square, making it difficult for black to free his position with d5. We see knight f6 by black, knight c3, knight takes d4, queen takes d4, d6, bishop e2, bishop g7, bishop d2, black castles kingside and queen e3, moving away the queen from this dangerous diagonal. Knight d7, and there it goes, h4. Keres is starting an immediate attack on the king side. f5, which is somehow weakening the king side, and now white is capturing on f5. G takes f5, knight d5, the pawn on e7 is under attack, e5, and now comes queen a3 targeting the weakened pawn on d6. Knight c5, bishop g5, queen d7, and white castles queenside. Knight e4, instead of thinking about developing somehow this bishop, black is moving his knight, and meanwhile Keres is intensifying the pressure. Queen e3, h6, and a strong response by Keres. g4, sacrificing the knight on g5. By the way, if you capture on h6, then black has this knight takes f2 move. If queen takes f2, simply bishop takes h6 check. That's why after h6 we see g4, and after h takes g4, h takes g4, white is managing to open up the h file. This is going to be very dangerous for black. Queen d8, the pawn on g5 is under attack, and rook h5, both protecting the pawn, also opening up the h1 square for the other rook. Knight c5, now comes rook h1, f takes g4, b4, a powerful move. White is kicking away the knight. Now if you place your knight on e6 or on d7, then white can play queen e4, but black played knight a4, still keeping the bishop's diagonal open. If you play queen e4, then bishop f5. But now comes c5, this time freeing the c4 square for the bishop. Bishop e6, and another powerful move by Keres, g6, sacrificing the knight on d5. By the way, instead of playing c5, if you played for example g6 at once, then black could play rook f4. If knight takes f4, then e takes f4, and if queen takes f4, then queen e7, and looks like that black is managing to defend. But in this case already, when you have a pawn on c5, you can just crush black by playing bishop c4 check. For example, let's just imagine that the pawn were on c5. Let's just make c5 and a waiting move by black a6, then you can play bishop c4 check. If bishop e6, then bishop takes e6 followed by rook h8, this fantastic sacrifice, and then after the exchange on h8, queen h6 check, king g8, queen h7 check, king f8, g7 check, and this is an easy win for white. Let's go back. After c5 we see bishop e6, now comes g6, and now if you place your rook on f4, then white will simply capture. Black accepted the sacrifice, bishop takes d5, and in this position Paul Keres made a move and black resigned. Here comes this mind-blowing rook h8 check. And black resigned because if bishop takes h8, then white can sacrifice the second rook as well. If you capture, you can easily get checkmate hit, or if you play king g7, then queen h6 check, and again this is going to be an easy win for white. Just a fantastic attacking game by Paul Keres. If you liked this crazy attack, don't forget to give the thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. More games are coming. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you a very impressive chess miniature played by French chess player Paul Journoud. Journoud is playing with the black pieces and his opponent is a chess player named Chapelle. The game was played in 1860 in Paris. This was a casual game and Chapelle opened up with e4, to which Journoud responded with Sicilian defense c5. Bishop c4, e6, and knight e2. In here, according to modern theory, the best move is considered to be queen e2, preventing d5, but in our game we have a strange-looking knight e2 move, which allowed black to play d5 without meeting any obstacles, and then after e takes d5, we have bishop b5 check, knight c6, white castled kingside, bishop d6, rook e1, bishop e6, and knight g3. Well, I have to tell you that in typical positions, a move like d4 just asks itself to be played, but instead we have knight g3, knight f6, knight f5, black castled kingside, knight takes d6, queen takes d6, bishop takes c6, b takes c6, queen f3. Well, if we have a look at the position, black has already completed his development, is enjoying a very pleasant and solid position, while on the other hand, white is not even thinking of completing the queenside development and is moving his queen, rook e8, and with this move black is already creating a very nasty bishop g4 threat. White played rook e3 trying to neutralize bishop g4, but this is not a good approach. Instead, it was better to move back the rook on f1, but instead we have rook e3 and d4 harassing white's rook. Now at this point already white's position is totally lost. There are no safe squares for white's rook and the threat remains the same. Bishop g4 is the threat. At some point black can even exploit the back rank weakness. That's why white decided to offer the exchange of queens, but black's response was shocking. You can pause the video and try to find black's next move. Ready? Well, instead of accepting the offer of exchange of queens or moving his queen, black simply munched the rook and sacrificed his queen. White accepted the queen sacrifice, but after e2 resigned because there is no way of fighting against this monster on e2. As Irving Chernev writes in his book Wonders and Curiosities of Chess, the lone isolated pawn holds all white's forces at bay. Right now, if you try to stop the pawn, then black can simply move away his bishop and the game is over. That's why, as I've already mentioned, after e2 resignation followed. White's game was terrible, but on the other hand, black managed to punish his opponent in a very impressive style. In the end, a chess puzzle for you where the task is to find the winning line for white. It's white to move and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check them out as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful game for you played by Evgeny Sveshnikov against Ruslan Sherbakov. The game was played in 1991 in Moscow. Sveshnikov had white pieces and he started with e4, c5 by Sherbakov, Sicilian defense. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, Sveshnikov goes for Nezhmetdinov Rosolimo attack, e6, white castles kingside, knight e7, c3, white is preparing to establish a strong center, or at some point white can even bring the bishop on c2 square, which we will see in the game, a6, bishop a4, b5, bishop c2, d5 and e5. Well, actually playing d4 looks more active and also this d4 looks more promising, but instead after d5 we see e5. And now black himself plays d4, gaining some space, and in return white is playing bishop e4, placing the bishop on this active square, bishop b7, a4 challenging black's pawn chain on the queen side, knight g6, a takes b5, a takes b5, we see rook takes a8 and bishop takes a8. Well, actually queen takes a8 looks better, both supporting these pieces and also controlling the a file, but instead after rook takes a8 we see bishop takes a8. Knight a3 eyeing on b5 square, knight a7, we see the exchange of light square bishops, queen b3, putting more and more pressure on b5, queen b7, c takes d4, c takes d4 and knight takes d4. Bishop takes a3, and after b takes a3 we see knight takes e5. Well, actually castling kingside looks safer, but instead we see knight takes e5. Now comes bishop b2, threatening knight takes e6 and then winning the knight. For example, now if castling kingside, then simply knight takes e6 followed by bishop takes e5, winning a pawn. That's why after bishop b2 black played knight c4, but now comes queen g3, sacrificing the bishop on b2 square. But black didn't accept the sacrifice and castled kingside. But let's have a look what will happen if black plays knight takes b2. Then white can capture on g7, and if we move like rook f8 trying to save the rook, then knight takes e6. Using the fact that the pawn is pinned and attacking the rook, and if queen e7 simply knight takes f8. And this is just crushing, black can't even recapture because either queen takes b2 or even rook e1 is stronger, it's over. Let's go back after queen g3, that's why black castled kingside, now comes bishop c3 and g6. Which is weakening the dark squares too much, and now Sveshnikov will artfully use that fact. Actually, it was very important to play queen b8 and if f4 only now g6. But when you are playing after bishop c3 g6 straight away, then after d3 kicking away the knight which is controlling the e5 square, and knight b6 the queen jumps on e5 square, and now this becomes very dangerous. Overlooking Sveshnikov's next threat, Ruslan Sherbakov played knight d7, and in this position Sveshnikov made a move and black resigned. Can you find his next move? Ready? He simply placed the queen on g7 square, giving a check, sacrificing the queen, and black resigned. Now if king takes g7, then after knight f5 double check king g8, white can either play knight e7 or knight h6, and this is a checkmate. The bishop confines the king's escaping routes, and this knight is just killing the enemy king. This suffocation mate is actually very popular, and every chess player should know this mating pattern. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave your comments. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have a brilliant attacking game for you played by Mikhail Tal against Boris Gulko. Tal started with e4, c5 by black, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, e6. We see the Scheveningen variation, and Tal chooses this razor sharp Matanovich attack, f4, knight c6, bishop e3, bishop e7, queen f3, a6, white castles queenside, queen c7, and g4. Tal is starting an immediate pawn storm on the king side. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, e5, f takes e5, d takes e5, queen g3, pinning the pawn on e5, and a bad move by black, knight takes g4. A better move is bishop d6, protecting the pawn on e5 and getting rid of that pin. If bishop e3, then bishop e6, developing the bishop. But after knight takes g4, white could have easily gained advantage by playing knight d5. If queen d6, then bishop c3, castling, bishop e2, queen h6 check, bishop d2. This is a forced line, bishop h4, bishop takes g4, bishop takes g3, bishop takes h6, bishop takes g4, rook g1, bishop h5, rook takes g3, and white is a piece up. Let's go back, but after knight takes g4, instead of that strong knight d5 move, Mikhail Tal played bishop e2, which allows black to equalize the game by playing queen c6. Though black played queen a5, I will tell you the difference a few moves later. Tal played bishop takes g4, e takes d4, knight d5. Now the threat is knight c7 check. Imagine that the queen were on c6, then black could have played bishop d6 in this position, attacking the queen and also covering this c7 square. But when the queen is on a5, there is no bishop d6 move. Though after queen takes a2, Tal didn't even play knight c7 check. Instead he played queen e5, threatening checkmate on e7, queen a1 check, king d2, queen a5 check, b4, and black queen is hurrying to protect the bishop on e7, rook g1, f6, bishop h5 check, and king f8. If g6, then knight takes f6, king f8, knight takes h7 check, rook takes h7, rook f1 check, bishop f5, rook takes g6, bishop g5 check, king d1, and black's position is just collapsing, and this is winning for white. Let's go back. After bishop h5 check, we see king f8, and now comes a fantastic move by Mikhail Tal. Can you find his next move? Ready? You can see that the queen on e5 is hanging, but Tal is just paying no attention, and he plays rook takes g7, sacrificing the queen. Black played f takes e5, but if king takes g7, then again white is winning after rook g1 check. If king h6, then queen f4 check, king takes h5, queen f3 check, king h6, queen g3, f5, queen g7 check, king h5, knight f4 check, and black king is getting checkmated. After rook takes g7, we see pawn takes e5, rook f7 check, king e8, rook takes e7 double check, king f8, rook f1 check, king g8, and after rook f7, black resigned. Well, Tal missed a checkmate into after knight f6 check, king f8, white has this rook f7 checkmate. Though of course after rook f7, white is also checkmating black king. If queen d6, then knight f6 check, of course rook e8 is also possible, but I think that this looks more beautiful. Queen takes f6 and rook e8 checkmate. What a brilliant game by Mikhail Tal. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful chess miniature for you played by Anatoly Karpov against P. Nikhanen. This game was played in 1989. Karpov had white pieces and he started with e4, c5 by Nikkanen, Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6 and bishop b5. Karpov goes for Rossolimo variation. White intends to capture on c6, doubling black's pawn on the queen side. White castles king side, g6, h3, preventing any possible bishop g4 moves, knight f6, e5, knight d5, d3, bishop g7, knight d2. Both players are developing their pieces, nothing special. Knight c7, knight e4, knight e6, bishop e3, b6 protecting the pawn, queen d2. Now white wants to offer the exchange of dark square bishops and black plays rook e8. And now after bishop h6, black is placing the bishop on h8 square, because fianchettoed bishop is always a good defender for the king. c3, and it was in here that Nikkanen made a fatal mistake. He played queen d5. Well, on the surface this move looks like an active move, but actually this is losing. And now you can pause the video and try to find Karpov's next move. Ready? He played knight d6. Sacrificing the knight, both attacking the rook on e8 and at the same time creating a very dangerous threat c4. For example, now if e takes d6, then after c4, it turns out that black queen is trapped. The queen is in the center of the board, but it's trapped. What a position! After knight d6, black played bishop takes e5 and Karpov simply captured the rook on e8. Bishop b8, now comes the knight, knight g5, bishop f4, and in this position Karpov made a move and Nikkanen resigned. Can you find his next move? Ready? Karpov played rook takes e6. An amazing queen sacrifice. But actually queen takes f4 is also playable. If, for example, knight takes f4, then knight f6 check, winning back the queen. You can't capture because you will get checkmated, and if king h8, then knight takes d5, and this is an endgame where white has an extra rook. This is winning. But instead, after bishop f4, as I've already mentioned, Karpov chose another beautiful line, knight takes e6. Now if bishop takes e6, then simply queen takes f4 and white has an extra piece. Or after rook takes e6, if bishop takes d2, accepting the queen sacrifice, then white is again bringing into life this brilliant idea, knight f6 check. If e takes f6, then rook e8 checkmate, or if king h8, then knight takes f7, and we see a very brutal checkmate on the board. If you enjoy this brilliant miniature, don't forget to give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. More games are coming. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and I have another brutal attacking game for you, played by the magician from Riga, Mikhail Tal. His opponent is a chess player named Andreopoulos, and the game was played in 1988 in Long Beach, which is a city in California. Mikhail Tal had white pieces and he started with e4, c5 by black, Sicilian defense, knight f3, e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, d6, black goes for Scheveningen variation, f4, knight c6, bishop e3, bishop e7, queen f3, black castles king side and Mikhail Tal castles queen side. We have opposite side castlings and this is going to be a very sharp game. a6, black is going to start an advancement on the queen side, meanwhile Tal is attacking on the king side, queen c7, g5, knight d7, and now you can pause the video and try to find Tal's next move. Ready? Already it's high time for a sacrifice and Tal played knight f5, offering a whole knight. b5 was played, but let's have a look. What if e takes f5? Then white can recapture on f5 with the threat of playing f6. If queen a5 then f6. Here the best move for black is give back the piece by capturing on f6, though after bishop takes f6, knight d5 still white has an advantage and a very dangerous attack. Or after f6, if we move like g takes f6, then white can play queen h5. Now if f5 trying to keep the king side closed, then rook g1. If b5, then rook g3 and then rook h3, and again this is going to be very dangerous. Or after queen h5, if move like f takes g5, then rook d5, if queen d8, then rook g1. If king h8, then bishop d3, and again this is a very dangerous attack. Let's go back, but after knight f5 we see b5, but sacrificing a single knight is boring, that's why we see knight d5 on the board. Look at these knights are like forked by a single pawn. He takes d5, well if queen d8 then white can capture on e7 and then on d6 this is just crushing. That's why after knight d5 as the queen on c7 is under attack, black captured on d5. He takes d5, rook e8, not the strongest continuation, knight c5 is better, counter-attacking the knight on f5, though white can respond with knight h6 check. If g takes h6, then after g takes h6, right now there is a mating threat, king h8, white can play d takes c6, and again white has a very dangerous attack. Let's go back, but after e takes d5, rook e8 was played, d takes c6, knight c5, and now question arises, how is Tal going to proceed with the attack? But here Mikhail Tal is launching another heavy punch. Here comes knight takes g7, and yes, finally we see the whole cavalry sacrificed. f5 was played, this f-pawn is marching forward, bishop takes f5. Well, if king g8, then rook g1, and there are some g6 threats, that's why bishop takes f5 was played, queen takes f6, knight e6, bishop d3, and black resigned. Actually, yes, black's position is hopeless, but black could have prolonged the game like playing rook h8. Let's have a look at one of the possible lines. White can play rook f1, come after the pawn on f7, if bishop d8, then rook g1, if king g8, then g6. Actually, this is a very impressive line. White can capture on g6 and then on g7, and then the dark square bishop can come, and then bishop takes h8. This is simply a massacre. That's why understanding all that, after bishop d3, black resigned. Another very impressive attack by Mikhail Tal. Once again, Tal showed his high class and we saw a lot of fireworks on the board. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave your comments. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, let's have a quick look at a game played by Milenko Loyanika and Gavain Jones. The game was played in 2009. White started with e4 and black went for Sicilian defense c5, knight f3 d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 g6. This is the dragon variation of Sicilian defense. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, black castles, bishop c4, bishop d7, castling queenside, and rook b8 by black. An interesting approach. This is the so-called Chinese dragon. Black is preparing knight a5 followed by b5. With a similar idea, black can even play queen b8. But we see rook b8 in the game, knight takes c6, a bad move by white. This gives black an easy chance to take on c6 with a pawn and open up the b file. h4, queen a5, and a horrible move by white, knight b1. Probably white got afraid of black's attack and decided to go for an immediate queen exchange. But this is actually a blunder and black wins on the spot. Can you find the winning move for black? Ready? in this position black played knight takes e4 and white resigned. Well, white has to give up its queen like queen d4 in order to avoid checkmate. Well, if you take on a5, here comes bishop b2 checkmate, an amazing checkmate by black. That's why after knight takes d4, as I have already mentioned, white resigned. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, I have a very beautiful game for you played by Mikhail Tal against Sviridov. The game was played in 1969 in Stuttgart, and this was a chess simul. Let's see how the game went on. Tal started with e4, c5 by Sviridov, Sicilian defense, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3 and g6. Black goes for dragon variation. Bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, bishop d7, white castles queenside, rook c8, king b1, queen a5, g4, h6, h4, a6. We can see that black is not hurrying to castle kingside. Instead, black is preparing an immediate attack on the queen side. Bishop e2, knight e5, g5, h takes g5, h takes g5, and a bad move by black, rook takes h1. A better move was knight h5, but probably Sviridov decided to exchange the rooks and only then play knight h5. But after rook takes h1, Mikhail Tal didn't capture on h1. Instead, he went for a fantastic combination. You can pause the video and try to find his next moves. Ready? Tal played g takes f6, allowing black to capture on d1 with a check, and now the whole idea of this combination, black plays knight takes d1, and right now you can see that both the queen on a5 and also the bishop on g7 are hanging. Black captured on d2, and now instead of recapturing, here comes this fantastic f takes g7 move. Now the threat is promoting the pawn to a rook or to a queen, and that will be a checkmate. And believe it or not, but in this position black resigned. Well, if e6, then white can promote the pawn to a queen. If king e7, then queen g7. And if queen a5, then bishop g5 check followed by queen g8 checkmate. Or after f takes g7, if a move like bishop e6, then white can promote to a queen, and after king d7, capture on c8 with a check, and only then capture on d2, and white has 2 extra pieces. Just a fantastic combination by the magician from Riga. Your comments and questions please, and thanks for watching. Good luck. Hello chess lovers, let's have a look at a game played by Magnus Carlsen and Deepan Chakravarti. This game was played in 2004, and at that time Carlsen was rated 2552. Carlsen is playing with the white pieces, and he started with e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, knight c3, knight f6 and bishop b5. Black played in this position e5, a relatively rare and risky line. More popular moves instead of playing e5 are queen c7 or g6. But here we have e5, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, knight takes e5, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen d4, forking these two knights, castling, queen takes e5. And here came a strong move by Carlsen. Can you find that move? That move is d4, sacrificing a pawn for a quick development. C takes d4, a dubious move. Considering what happened next, a better option would have been queen takes d4. But here we see c takes d4, rook e1, bishop e6, and a strong novelty by Carlsen. Can you find that move? That move is bishop g5. White simply prevents black from castling queenside and at the same time threatens knight f6 check. Bishop e7, and another strong move by Carlsen. Can you find that move? Well, in this position, knight f6 check is also playable. For example, bishop takes f6, rook e5, bishop e5, f4, bishop c7. This is also in white's favor as well, but Carlsen went for another interesting line. f4, giving no chance black. Queen d5, bishop takes e7, king takes e7, and here came another destructive move. Can you find that move? f5, trying to open up this e-file. Queen takes f5, queen d4, queen d5, queen b4 check, c5, knight takes c5, a5, queen a3, queen d4 check, king h1, queen b4, queen e3, and black resigned because black's position is inevitably being destructed if, for example, queen g4, h3, queen g6, queen a3. There are so many threats, that's why black resigned. A great game by Magnus Carlsen. Your comments please, and thanks for watching.